Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Forward Focus. It is June 14th. We are right in the middle of a 110-degree heat wave. That is just awesome. How are you guys doing this week? I had some friends down by the border in southern Texas, and they were saying it's like 118 with 90% humidity. I don't even want to know what that feels like. Like you're being boiled alive. Yeah, not so much fun. We are gonna take a look at what is going on in the overall market here today. So far, we've just been stuck in a trading range throughout today's activity, and I will show you guys why this is the case and what we can look for in the weeks ahead. So, first of all, want to invite you to have a chance to pick up a copy of my book, Simple Steps to Trading Discipline. You can get your ebook copy at tonyhansen.com/ebook. Let's flip on over here to the charts. We've got a nice avalanche here underway on the smaller time frames. So weekly time frames, we are still in this mega phone here, not looking to really break out of this easily anytime soon. On the daily charts, what we've got is a two-wave move off of the high from the last high of the megaphone and a move back up into the midway zone. So what we're looking at now is because of the momentum of this move, there's a possibility to do 1, 2, 3, which would bring this all the way back up to the previous highs. And if it manages to do an equal measured move, that can even take it to slightly higher highs. So we could easily be looking at 7,900 on the NQ. This is still a June contract. We are flipping over to September. So June contracts expire next Friday. You're going to start to see volume shift here this week. Still have more activity on the June contracts here today, though. For those that are new to futures trading, contracts expire the third Friday of every quarter. So March, June, September, December. That's when you'll see the end of trading for them. And they roll over the Thursday before. So that's when you can start trading the new contract. But volume will be pretty light on the new contract right as it gets started. So looking at the potential for this to do essentially inverse head and shoulders, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 is basically a wave up that's a large impulse move, a short kneecap type of correction, and then a continuation move where you're looking for a measured move. So that's what we've got the potential for here on the daily time frames. So I want to be really cautious with shorting. Usually if this holds this high here and actually does end up pulling lower, it'll start off with a slower chop, a lot of overlap, and then momentum will gain steam to the downside. It's very difficult for this to just automatically drop back down unless you've got some sort of news-driven event that is carrying it to that level, since this is substantially stronger than average. So you'll see, things like this. It'll pop back up, but then it'll come back in the direction that it was favoring in the first place. So that's what we're looking at right now. Cautious on the short side to start with. Possibility for a long side pop into next week. If we don't get that pop within a couple of days going into next week, though, then the base or the correction is going to be too long to give us that 1, 2, 3 move. So we're kind of nearing that. We've got a couple more days that it can go and still manage to do that. But if it goes past that, past what these time difference for these previous little corrections is, then that probability starts to dramatically decrease. And after that, if it tries to go to higher highs, like for example, over here. So it's past the shorter ones, but not quite to the longer ones. It can go and do more of a false start and then might pull back into the range and do something like that. So we really want to see this going by about here. So by next Friday, really, is when that should take off if it's going to manage to do that strategy. And what we would usually see is like a two-way correction in here, maybe an inverse head and shoulders within this zone. That will help get things going. So on the intraday time frame, here's the 240-minute chart that we've been following throughout the last week. You can see we came right into that 76.4% Fibonacci fan. So we were watching this way back when. It was coming up into the 61.8. You can see it hit the 38.2. So little 2T, steep 2T into that 76.4 pullback. And what you're seeing so far is it's trying to do a secondary pullback. So that secondary pullback is what can lead to the 1, 2, 3 type of move. It's not really the prettiest secondary pullback. I actually would have liked it if this would have gone up like that and then done a secondary pullback. That would have helped because right now most of the trading bulk is on the lower end of the channel. And I'd really like to see that shift. I want to see more of it at the upper end, the upper limits. And that was really a key point when we were going into the last 24 hours. Could it do essentially a 1, 2, 3 or something that would bring it back up into the upper end of this zone? And it just couldn't do it. So if this tries to pull up here at this point, your overall momentum is going to be about like that, which can drive a bit of a stronger move to the downside. So that can try to flip things over and make it more difficult to get that 1, 2, 3 pattern. So it's going to be a pretty choppy week next week. The type of activity that you're seeing like over here that we've seen so far over the last week, it would be pretty normal for that to try to continue as we go into next week. It's not as normal for this to try to get in some of these bigger impulse moves yet. So if this tried to go and just take off right here, for example, this is not really long enough of a correction compared to here to easily sustain that move. You'd have more of a shot that it might go up to here, do a 2T, and then pull back again. So it would actually create more of a trap if it tries to go without waiting a couple more days. So let's flip on over and take a look at some of the other markets now. I'm going to show you guys a Russell here because the Russell's been a little bit different. It hasn't really been trading as well in sync with the other indices. On the 30-minute charts, we've got a nice shift in momentum going on into the highs. This created a 2T going into today, and we have a nice two-wave pullback coming off of this high. Hold on a second. So right now, I'm gonna go to a different time frame here quick. Here's what's going on our daily charts. So we are reacting to the two-wave pullback into the support. And so this is what I was talking about happening on the NASDAQ. If it tried to go with too short of a base compared to over here, meaning this base is much smaller than this pullback, it can be stunted and it can create that 2T. So what happened here on the daily chart of the Russell, that's exactly the risk that we were looking at on the NASDAQ just a second ago. And then it has the two-way pullback, 76.4% support, trying to react off of that and not having a whole lot of luck right now. So this is something that can actually go and end up gaining momentum just depending on how many times it tests that support level. You would only want it to test it once to try to go and hold. And ideally, the bounce would give you a drive in momentum to the upside so that this creates a widening wedge that can have a shallower pullback and break higher. That's what the bulls would really need to get this going. And right now, we don't have that yet. It's still possible because this momentum is okay, it's average, but we would really want to see that pull back up to that level. Only a smaller little correction here so that you've got 0, 1, 2, 3. This would not be an ideal level for a megaphone to short it because you're just coming right off of a main low. So it's more likely that that would have a drive back up into this range and then would continue to the upside. So this is certainly a possibility here. What we're looking at on the Russell right now, but it has to maintain that momentum. If it does not, then what we're going to be looking at is a greater chance, in fact, a greater probability, that would go more like this and can drive momentum back to the downside. So you'd basically see a retest of that 76.4 pretty quickly going into next week, a bounce, and just not really being able to break out of that channel. So as you can see, as we head into the start of next week, I want you to be more cautious. I'm going to be more cautious. It's going to be more of a scalping type of environment. Less odds for strong momentum move. There is, of course, the chance that it can drive and continue that push, but watch really carefully for the intraday momentum on smaller time frames because it's so easy for this to shift here at this point, especially with the way the NASDAQ is looking. Again, they're not really trading incredibly well together. Let me show you the NASDAQ daily here again, just to put it in comparison to what's going on in the Russell. So you can see we have general directional similarities, but intraday and even, some extent on the daily, things are just not quite lining up. So a little bit of a pause here would be okay to still get that, but it's really, I would like to see the Russell just push, even if the NASDAQ gives us that extra stall that the NASDAQ shows that it needs to push to do the 1, 2, 3. The Russell can still keep going. And I'd like to not see it pause. So I'm actually looking for two different things here. I'm looking for the NASDAQ to stall a little bit more into next week to build up the momentum to base. And I want the Russell to keep pushing. It's absolutely possible that this can happen. We've seen this happening a lot in recent weeks. So it's totally normal that this could still manage to push up, but I'd have to do it like right away. And intraday right now, it's not looking that favorable. Let me just show you guys. So the intraday, what we were seeing was that momentum shift. So ideally, if that was going to get that extra push, this would have had the opposite effect. So we've got a pullback in terms of price, pullback in terms of price, and then shifting momentum on each of these moves up. So that's creating that 2T, and today it's actually kind of pulling things back. It could still manage to shift and go higher, but what that does is that the base pulls back too long. Remember, I wanted that to have that surge in momentum in order to get that bigger megaphone. Right now, the intraday chart's not favoring that. They're favoring the second scenario where it comes back into that 76.4% fan and actually ends up showing us more weakness. So we can still get the NASDAQ surging while on a 1, 2, 3 here in a couple of days while the Russell pulls back. Basically, it would go like that. The NASDAQ would go around the same time, but the Russell just wouldn't get off the ground. Yes, in this case, if it bases longer, it's more likely to drop because you've got this 2T formation here and the momentum shifting. We saw that in League of Traders this week. I'm not sure the day though, to pull up a chart for you. Let me see if I can see the chart quick in the logs. Give me just a second. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know if I posted it in the room or if we just were looking at it in the live session. Here's what the megaphone can look like though. So with the slower megaphone, because of the way the current action is, see how this went faster off of this low and gained the steam, and then it had the slower pullback? That's what it would be more likely to do if it managed to get up enough momentum to bring it to that upper end. I'm not sure what day we were looking at that in, but we had that exact same shift in momentum in one of the League of Traders channels here this week. Sometimes I can recall exactly where I looked at something and we're talking about it. Other times like, no, I don't know. So if anybody else remembers or comes across it, let me know. It might have been in the forum and not the other channel. I'm not seeing it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging here for it, but if you go back and watch the videos from this week and scroll back through the forum, you're going to come across an image exactly like this that ended up giving that short. Yeah, I don't see it. It must have been too far back. All right. Anyways, it's a similar concept to this. This is not quite it, but it's a similar concept. See here, actually, this might have been the early stages of it. It could have been going past there. So it starts out stronger, shifts, goes like that, and then breaks down. So that's a similar idea there. Would I'm sorry, David, I didn't remember where you were looking at when you asked your question. Was it the NASDAQ or the Russell? Or the NASDAQ? Let's see here. Probably not. So so his question is, would that not qualify as a Phoenix due to momentum? With really steeper than average momentum, Phoenixes aren't really as good. You're more likely to see a good 1, 2, 3 versus a good Phoenix. So they'll usually go faster, whereas a Phoenix would have based out to here. And if the momentum is too strong over here, it can have a harder time following through and it can actually shift the momentum on the follow through so that it's a little bit more gradual, especially if it's like a straight up move. This is kind of borderline. It's on the extreme side. It's not as extreme as they get, but it can make it harder to get a Phoenix. So Phoenix, you'd want to see base out to about here. So you can look back at, previous levels of correction, give you an idea how long that Phoenix would pull back to. And this is one where if you put a low here and a high here for a fan, it could surpass that 76.4% fan because the move is so steep to the upside. So it might do a reaction off the 76.4 and then still pull back, break the fan before it can do anything else. So fan level from here to here wouldn't be as useful. It can help provide some shorter term support, but it's not as useful to get the really stronger phoenixes and avalanches going. Let's go take a look at some of the other markets now. I'm going to pull up some of our Forex pairs. We've been following the euro dollar in particular recently. This has been a fun one over the last couple weeks here. So the euro dollar a couple weeks ago, what we were looking at was the bias started to shift. We were looking on the monthly time frame chart here. And originally, you'll see here on the downside, it kind of was basing out, looking like it could go and do another continuation back to the downside, but it went too long. The second little base there just went out too far. And I'm going to show you the weekly because it's actually easier to see it on the weekly. So basically for this to go on the downside, here's like 1, 2, 3, and then it tried to do it again. This was the do or die point. It needed to drop there in order to do that clean second wave to the downside. Instead, it went like this. And this is exactly the type of thing that we saw happening in the NASDAQ over the last couple of days. Past that kind of do or die point and then popped after hours. It did end up turning back around in the NASDAQ. We could see that happening here on the euro dollar as well. It all depends on how high that bounces. And so far, it didn't sustain that bounce. So what that tells me is that that can have the potential of turning back around again. So I bought this on the breakout just as a couple day hold. Let me show you a smaller time frame. So here's the smaller time frame. And here's your 2-wave move up. And then the second wave just slowed. So it hit average impulse move size, but it didn't go to the larger impulse move size. And to sustain that and prove that this was going to turn around and break stronger, it needed to go for the bigger impulse moves and not slow here. So by falling short, this is trying to switch the bias once again. So basically, we've been calling this the zone of pain in League of Traders because the outcome depends upon the smaller bias changes, the smaller time frame changes where the momentum can shift, like it can start to favor one direction and then the way it plays out changes the bias again. Yes, it is a slick, nuanced trade, and we've seen those nuances like all week this week in League of Traders. If you guys have not reviewed the classes, for those of you that aren't in, we did shift when we do our League of Traders. It is now at 11 o'clock Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then of course Mentor Mondays at the same time at noon. And we're meeting for an hour each day, and each day focuses upon the topic that is in Mentor Monday. So we're using all of the live data and things like that to basically focus on what we've covered in Mentor Monday. And this week was all about stops and losses. That meant looking at the nuanced changes, the nuances of price change that were affecting situations that were stopping people out, especially things that were just flushing people out only to then go in the direction that you're anticipating in the first place. So that nuanced shift is exactly what the entire week in League of Traders was this week. So as we go into next week, I'm looking for this to just go back into this congestion and slop around again. So it didn't give us enough to say, hey, I'm going to be able to sustain a larger break on the weekly time frame. Not going to be able to go and do that and head back up. This drop is negating that, and it's trying to shift the bias again to break back down. But it would usually go into more of a range here again over the next couple of weeks. So not looking like so much fun here again, kind of going out of favor again. We'll keep an eye on it, see how it starts to shape up over the next couple weeks. Dollar yen, it's still been flopping around in its weekly range. We've got a little bit of a 2T action here as it went back into the zone of the previous breakdown. This is actually very similar to what the NASDAQ did overnight. Yesterday. Line those up for you and take a look at that. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool. I think market symmetry is really awesome. Momentum shifting, it's what's driving the difference. So follow through direction is the same. Momentum is what's a little bit different. But this pattern, that's one where you'll see that whole series repeated over and over again. Right now we've got a little bit of a shallow phoenix trying to form on the 240. Shallow phoenix would go like this. Ideally, this pullback would last about the same amount of time as this upside move, so it's a little tricky here with these double highs. So I'm considering it to be a pretty good level for it to try to do that. It would need to confirm immediately today. But the daily chart has that room for that to bounce. Now, on the daily chart, we've got a drop, a secondary drop. Secondary drop is stunted compared to the first. That means this next correction here could lead to a third drop. So we're looking at the Phoenix, watching how that Phoenix momentum tries to play out. Got more of a base here to start with, so more likely to get a price correction this time around, which would go along with the shallow Phoenix. Could come back up into this range here and then give that secondary drop there. So that is what I'm looking for on the dollar yen. See pound dollar. This looks lower still. This has the potential to do a 1, 2, 3 with the widening move here and kind of the rolling over at the highs. This is going to be a do or die point right here. So whether this shifts like that or breaks down, both of those are possible on the daily chart. Let's look at the weekly though. Weekly can do either too. It has its own megaphone forming here. The weekly still looks lower. So I would keep more of a bias on focusing on the short side on the pound versus the longer side. It's not as long of a base as I would love to see. So this megaphone, when you get megaphones like this, and they're kind of a shorter little correction, they can offer continuations right away, or they can go and then widen up and go into a range again. And that's what we saw happening in the overall market over the last couple days too. We were following a megaphone, and then I said, hey, this afternoon is going to be a mess. You know, the next rest of the days are going to be a total, choppy mess because we had the megaphone. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So when you get one wave down and then you get a megaphone, that potential is there if it doesn't go right away. This one over here, it's not as nice of a megaphone, but it went and broke right away. Do you guys have any individual stocks you want me to take a look at? Monthly chart on Swiss. We talked about this early last year. This is a do or die point on the Swiss right here to break higher because it had already had the pullbacks, the two-way pullback. One of the things that was affecting it was that this high was so close to this high. So this is our two-way move up, but it's so close that it has the risk of shifting things and turning things over. And it just couldn't confirm when it got to that do or die point at the beginning of last year. So it's not looking so hot here. We've just been watching this as more of the scalpish, smaller little moves, but it has that kind of shift in momentum that's trying to turn things for a two-way pullback here on the weekly chart. A little bit of an avalanche trying to form on the indices here on like a 1 minute time frame. We're just right in the middle of a range. Not the cleanest action. Hold on a second. Let's see, let me show you. So the NASDAQ here, it's at kind of a funky spot. So we're basing along here, and this has the potential to go and do that second wave down, but it's not really giving us any kind of smaller shifted bias yet. It's not like holding the lower end of the range, or it didn't pull back and just do a little base there to break. That's common too. It can pull back to the lower end of the channel, just do a little kneecap and then go. Not really seeing that yet. The Russell is smaller time frames than the 2. Here's a 400. So you can see the 2T this morning. And basically, here is our 2-wave down this morning. So here's our measured move here to here. The reason I'm measuring that is because this one is stunted. Same momentum, but this is stunted. So it's treating this like a 2-wave correction here. So this is the end of wave 2. We got 1 and 2. And then things are going sloppy and shifty in here. So we had this try to do a little bit of a steep 2B at this point. Let me widen this up and you can see it a little bit better. Clear it. So here's what we've got going on this morning. We've got the 2-wave drop. Here's the 2-wave correction. Here's the 2B right here. That's a buy. It hit the target, R3, resistance 3, and then just crashed again. And the difference between the lows isn't enough yet to support like a momentum reversal. We would want even spacing between the lows to get that going again. And that didn't happen. That means this has a greater chance that that can go and break down and actually gain momentum because it would treat this like a shallow avalanche. So lovely, lovely bit of mess there right now. And again, because of what we're seeing on the daily charts, it's not really too much of a surprise. Let's see, oil and gold. So oil's coming off of an inverse head and shoulders, kind of messy one on the 15-minute time frame. The daily chart is still holding that 76.4 that we talked about. Let me pull up the chart for you for that. So from last week, here's what we were looking at on oil. It was coming right into that 76.4. Really strong momentum into here. We had the two-way correction, we had the shallow avalanche, we had the 1, 2, 3. This is a widening up zone. That means, generally speaking, we're going to see more back and forth action at this zone. And this is a second test of that 76.4% yet. There's still room that this can go lower, just widening up lower. I don't see anything on the daily chart that would get me into a trade based on the daily chart now. I would just be focusing on the smaller intraday charts right now. And they're suggesting holding this low here just throughout the rest of the day. We've got basically a little bitty phoenix part coming out of a inverse head and shoulders, but it's not pretty. Let me show you the 60 minutes on it. It's a struggle, and I'll show you why, because it had a 2T going into it. News may affect oil, won't it? Ooh, absolutely. In fact, that's been a leading force lately. So here's nice two-wave move. Good base here for the continuation breakout. Shallow Phoenix, 2T, avalanche, bear flag. 2T, weird inverse head and shoulders, right up into breakdown zone for 2T. So this is resistance here, intraday. So this is kind of rounding off here at lows. It's at that daily support, but I don't feel too excited about this on the upside. This was a really steep move, but then it did the 2T, fell back more than 50% of this rally, and it just looks like it's going to struggle as we go into next week. I especially wouldn't want to hold an oil play over the weekend. A lot of our news has been coming out over the weekend that's been affecting oil. Let's go look at gold. Can I elaborate on how I don't see anything on the daily chart for a trade on here? Because on the daily chart, what I know is that this is going to be usually more of a back and forth type of move. And so I would want to see something like a two-wave move like that would tell me, hey, I got a daily short at that point. If it had pulled up here, done a kneecap or a little base, pulled up, that would have given me a short. But I don't have any two-wave move yet on here. If this goes like this, bases up like that, that could give me a short at that point, but it would still have a little bit of support at that level. So I might be a little bit more cautious there, but I think that could be more sustainable. So then it would treat this as wave 1, base, wave 2, base, wave 3. So it could give me a 1, 2, 3 coming back into that level. But I would want to see that pull up a couple more days before that would happen. That's a good question. Also, I'd like to see volume dropping during that congestion. Can I look at the time correction occurring on PayPal 1-minute chart? I don't have a live 1-minute chart on this computer for you guys for PayPal for stocks. I'm 10 minutes delayed on my teaching computer for stock trades. If you want to post a chart into the forum, I can take a look at what you're looking at, Karen. just do a screenshot and post it over there. I'll pull up the larger time frame here. So larger time frame, tilted megaphone, broke to the upside, and now we're kind of chopping around, widening up again megaphone. On the daily chart, we're right into 0.4. It doesn't really matter which number you call these, just call them consistently. Some people call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't matter which one you use. 3 points on top, 2 points on bottom. So this is often going to be a short zone at this point here, but it goes really fast. So with the trend placement, the question is, can this go and do something like that and pop? So for this to show follow through and something that's actually going to turn into a reversal, we would need immediate follow through action to this point. Correction here, and then the continuation. That could still go into a basically a momentum reversal plus situation and then turn around. And given the way the weekly time frame looks, this play out is possible because this is still just a little teeny tiny correction so far on the weekly scale. So I don't suspect as much of a sharp turnaround. I would expect a turnaround would be more likely to lead to a higher high a little bit later on. So correction is probably still viable at this point. Look for a little 2 correction again, like coming out of that megaphone, and then that could be viable at that point. Let's see, Karen. 1 minute. Okay, that's kind of rounding off a little bit. It's hard to see that. Hold on, let me see if I can. I can't really close in on this tighter. So you've got your momentum reversal short, and then ideally for the momentum reversal short to break down easier, this would have followed through more quickly, like that. So what we've got, I know it's hard for you guys to see this, but it's a 2-wave move here. That's your momentum reversal target, your typical target. Here's your overall momentum reversal. So short there, continuation, and then it's kind of playing around here. So to break lower, what we need to see is this base go about the same amount of time as this previous one. Since you've got your fan in there, ideally that would be a good zone. And we want to see it go as a shallow avalanche. I generally like shallow avalanche to have a little bit more tilt to it because that traps more people. Remember, when this goes baseline flat and this just kind of blocky, then there's more of a chance you can get flushes and get some adverse moves. So ideally, this would have looked a little bit wider, and this would have been a little bit, well, that's okay for a shallow, but a little bit wider would help kind of get that going a little bit more. Also, you wouldn't have a low that is quite as close to a lower low right there. You would have more of like a 1, 2, 3 here into the support. So this slight little rounding off can be detrimental, but like we talked about in League of Traders, when you're looking at like where that starts and where that ends, the closer it is to just being in this first third where you get that slightly lower low, that's better. If it's around halfway, that's going to be worse. This is a do or die area, yes, right here. Gold. Let me pull up gold here. Just to think a second, it is thinking. That Russell is still acting pretty weak. It looks like it's going to try to break. My gold chart is not wanting to load here for me. Well, we'll let it think about it here. You guys have any other stock that you want me to look at? NVDA. So NVIDIA can do a 1, 2, 3 type of move here on the weekly chart. It's going to look a lower, but a lot of times what happens, so this has the 1, 2, 3 here, the two correction back up. Momentum reversal off highs, 1, 2, 3. This is a false first high. And this false first high is what can actually drive selling even better. So this can base out here, go down again. Generally, shift won't be a measured move compared to here, typically, but I would expect further downside. It might chop around here for a little bit first, but overall, I would expect this to try to go lower. So here, you'll notice when I look at the whole corrective phase, League of Trader peeps, see how that is closer together. So that makes it easier for that to go lower. If this had hit a lower low here and pulled back up, it could turn around easier. All right, gold, 1 minute, is coming out of an avalanche. Well, no, not an avalanche, bear flag. Triangle, bear flag. Let's see. Weekly on gold is in one huge triangle going back about 5 years. We are just retesting previous highs. Looks like it wants to try to do a break to the top side. Problem with triangles is they can do a false break one direction and then flip and turn the other way. Let me grab the chart, show you guys what I'm looking at. It's not too pretty. So this is in a bigger triangle going way back. So two-way correction, nice little buy setup here. It's good time development on that correction. So that was a pretty good buy, but I don't know how easily it's going to sustain it. Is this going to be stunted here? Because that's what it kind of looks like it's going to do. It looks like it could be stunted and then pull and chop in here. So this should have gone a little bit further, a little bit faster, still kept going if that was going to go and manage to sustain itself. The 240 minute actually looks like a 2T on the smaller time frame. Let me show you. So my best guess on this is that this is going to pull back here on the weekly time frame now. Probably back into close to that 1300. Here's the 240. So this went from the 2T over here to an even bigger one over here. So if that was going to manage to do a sustained 1, 2, 3, it wouldn't have rounded off like this. So that's also, and this rally would have gone farther compared to the previous daily rally over here. So that tells me this is more likely to pull in here before it tries to go again. Tesla and corn. Tesla is a beautiful shallow avalanche, and it is doing exactly what we were looking for. Should continue, but it's at a key point for support. Let's see, monthly. I set my volume at some point. It's kind of a mess. Anyway, yeah, probably chop in here first. It's possible this could try to pull up here. With the 1, 2, 3, what I would like to have seen was this to be a kind of slower, more gradual move up, then go into the shallow avalanche, then go into a 1, 2, 3. It would bring it back down to this level, then widen up. It's a possibility, but not as likely. I know a lot of people are like, doomsday, it's going to zero. I don't really see that yet on this. Yeah, we had a pretty substantial short here, but that support is pretty good too, so go back to the weekly again. And the way this is reacting here, it's not typical of how it would react if it was going to do a kneecap and head lower. So it kind of rounded off, bounced really sharp. Usually for more of a kneecap to give us a secondary move, it would go closer to that. And we just aren't getting that. So that tells me it's trying to hold this up. Something's trying to hold this up on the daily charts here. So more downside right here is just not going to be quite as good. Karen says, Elon recently bought around 1 million in shares. I don't know when he did that, but that could be part of it. He's trying to hold it up. And that shift there, the way that shifted, that is something that usually will give you at least a temporary reprieve, even if it means going into zone of congestion. My guess is a lot of this type of action is what is most likely here. Let's see, corn. Corn has been soaring, but it is just coming into really good resistance zone on the weekly time frame. Let me see. The smaller time frame is doing a much better, like 1, 2, 3 attempt though. Let me show you guys corn. Oops. I don't know how I did that, but okay. Stop. There we go. Arrow. Okay. So we're coming into this level of resistance, and here's a kneecap. So this can go up to that point. Depends on if it stalls at 50% of this rally or if it makes it to 61.8. So looking at close to 500 on this before it could, go into bigger pause. But this is pretty good for turnaround type of action. You got 1, 2, 3 zone lows. Actually, you could probably count it that way, but we've got a narrowing channel that way. This is a little bit more of a typical channel. Oh, I can't draw my straight lines there, guys. Cheapers. There. That's straighter. Kind of goes straighter. I'm not a graphic artist, obviously. Ivy wouldn't let you buy corn. Karen says she had tried to buy corn a week ago. Huh. I don't know. I don't trade corn, so I can't tell you too much about that. It looks like I'm permissioned for it, but I haven't traded it, so I haven't tried. Oh, corn, the symbol, C-O-R-N. So here's our ETF, or fund. Hold on a second, you guys. For some reason, yes. All right, can you guys still hear me okay? My Ninja Trader's going a little crazy there. Okay, good. All right, so corn is our exchange traded fund, essentially. And it wouldn't let you buy it, huh? I don't know why. I've never tried, but chart looks good. Let's see, monthly. Okay, monthly is definitely due for a spike. Here's how I would count the lows on the monthly. 1, 2, 3. So usually this will give us a little bit more of a spike. I think if you've got corn, you're pretty good holding it still. All right, gang, we are going to wrap on up here. Let's see if we can find some more trades into the end of the week. And I will see you all back here on Monday. So you can find this video on YouTube here shortly, and it'll also be on my main website, tonyhansen.com, and on tonyhansen.com/Friday will also pull the link up for you there. So those are the places you can go to rewatch it. And like I said, League of Trader folks, all of the classes from this week are in the member section right now, so you can go back and watch those too. I've also set it up so that GoToWebinar, as soon as it processes any recording, it will immediately send you out a replay link with the recording in it as well. All right, guys, have a wonderful rest of your week, your weekend, and try to stay somewhat cool. And I will see you all back here next week.